Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 45 of the Tick Bootcamp podcast. The title of today's interview is Before Danica, an interview with professional race car driver Angelica Fuentes Garcia. My name is Richard Johannesson.
And I'm Matt Sabatello.
Today's podcast guest is the international racing champion, Angelica Fuentes Garcia. Angelica Fuentes Garcia is a 50-year-old woman residing with her Scottish-born husband in London, England. She is a third-generation professional race car driver born and raised in Mexico. Ms. Fuentes Garcia was a racing prodigy. She was a licensed race car driver at the age of 13, and she won her first national championship at the age of 16. She won her second Mexican national championship in 2006. Her two Mexican national championships broke racing's gender barrier. During her illustrious career, she has participated in races and rallies all over the world, collecting numerous wins, including 7 European national championships. Unfortunately, Ms. Fuentes Garcia became sick and was forced to resign from her racing team. Her illness started after a tick bite she suffered in Monte Carlo. Despite the classic presentation of a rash at the site of her bite, she was misdiagnosed by 22 separate doctors in the UK and Mexico. Hi, Angelica, and welcome to the program.
Hello, Richard. Thank you for having me in your program.
We're blessed to have you. So, Angelica, can you share with our listeners how your life was different before you began to show symptoms of a tick disease?
Yes, well, I was, as a friend used to call me, I was a jumping bean, Mexican jumping bean. I was happy. I was doing so many things with my business. I am in the jewelry business. I was racing. I was going to the gym. I was so independent, a woman that had energy. My mom used to call me my hurricane. Every time I went back to Mexico, we were like, let's go here, there. It was an ongoing energy in my body. As we say, I was living the dream.
You were born and you grew up in Mexico?
I was born and grew up in Mexico until I was 34. And through motor racing, I met my husband, Keith. That now that's why I end up living in London. He's Scottish and we live in London.
So let's talk about your motor racing background. I understand that you began motor racing as a young child.
Yes, I was lucky enough that my dad goes back to my grandfather than my dad, and he was he was a racing driver, then rally driver, and I just loved the sport. And I went into rallying since I was 13. When I was little, and then I was rallying when I was 14 as a driver in the rally car that my dad used to drive. So, and I achieved my first championship when I was 16 as a driver.
So let's walk back for a minute, Angelica. You began driving when you were 13, and you were able to get your driver's license, or at least your racing license, at the young age of 13?
Yes, on those days you were allowed to do that, by your parents signing this, like a release in this paper, and that they gave you the permission. And on those days you were allowed to drive and to compete.
And you always had, a special skill that allowed you to perform at a very high level, even at that very young age.
Yes, I think you develop things. And obviously, I had my dad that was my best coach ever. My first rally that I did as a driver, he was for driving me. And I managed to spin the car up, by mistake. And he just, instead of shouting at me, he was all relaxed. We almost crashed. And he said, come on, you never, the steering wheel, you never hold it like that. You learned, come on, let's keep moving. We're losing time. And he just, and I think he taught me a lot. And then at some point he ended up being my sponsorship.
It is very rare that we see women racing at any level, and you were racing at the highest levels in Mexico as early as 16 years old.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And on those years, we're talking about 1984. On those days, I was very rare to see a woman, and then a woman that was performing well. And actually, at some point, I couldn't even be a member of a club because I was a woman.
You won 2 separate championships in Mexico, and it's my understanding that you're the only woman to have ever won a racing or a rally championship in the country of Mexico.
Yeah, until now I am the only woman to manage to win a championship as a driver in regularity rallies and as a co-driver in the National Championship of Mexico.
So I'm assuming because you had so much success both as a child and then as a young adult, that it was your vision that you would continue to race at a high level for the rest of your life.
Yes, that has been my plan, and motor racing has been, big part of my life. And I have been lucky that I have rallying around the world. Tasmania, I did Pikes Peak in Colorado, and I have 2 records there, and 7 championships in the UK. Monte Carlo rally. So, and the opportunities have been coming along, and the more I do it, it's just nice to see how more doors open to keep racing.
Can you share with our listeners how you began to exhibit tick disease symptoms and what impact that had on your ability to progress as a professional race car driver?
I knew that I was bitten, but I wasn't aware of Lyme disease, never heard of that. And I started getting really tired. So the illness didn't develop until 2 months later after the bite. But in between those 2 months, I started to notice that I was very tired, sleeping naps, but I thought, I am maybe over exercising because I was very fit at the time. I was going to the gym once a day for 1 hour and a half. I was running my business, and then I had a couple of days that my hands got a little bit shaky, and I said, well, that's strange. Maybe I didn't sleep well last night. And we always find excuses until I went to Mexico to do one of my rallies, and this nightmare, what I call nightmare, started, and I went just completely down the hill there.
How old were you when you began to exhibit the symptoms that you just described to us?
I was 47.
And for how long a period of time did you treat before you were able to get a tick disease diagnosis?
I was misdiagnosed for 7 months. I saw 22 doctors between Mexico and the UK, and nobody knew what was wrong with me. That's why now I'm dealing with a chronic Lyme disease, because it took more than 6 months to be diagnosed.
So you mentioned that you recall the tick bite that caused your illness. Can you walk back a little bit and describe that tick bite for us?
I was bitten in a hotel room because I wasn't walking in any long grass in the hills. I was bitten while I was doing Monte Carlo rally historic in France. And I remember at the end of the rally, during the rally, my eyelid, I was bitten on the eyelid. My eyelid was really swollen, and skin like flakes was coming off my eyelid, and it was really painful, very painful. And so it stayed like that, like 3 or 4 days, until I came back to the UK, and then went to see the doctor, because at some point I thought this is an herpes or something. It was really bad, and he sent me to the hospital, and I got checked there by another 2 doctors and a nurse, and they thought I came up with a reaction of soap or makeup, but I'm not a person that wears makeup every day. So, and that went on for almost a month, that I couldn't even touch my eyelid. Even water was really irritable on my skin. So yeah, it was very uncomfortable.
And Angelica, you said that the hospital mentioned that this was a reaction to makeup?
Yes, to makeup, and to makeup or something. If I have changed any products on my face, and I said no, it just came out of the blue. So nobody really make up a link that this was a bite. And now when I see a picture, because I took a picture and I sent it to a friend that is an eye doctor in Mexico, saying, I have this problem. They can't help me here. I don't know what's wrong with me. And that's the only picture I have. And now when I see it, I can see like a red ring underneath it, underneath my eye. So I knew that was the bite after I discovered I got it for about Lyme disease, and I knew that was my bite.
Angelica, after your tick bite in Monte Carlo, can you describe how your symptoms progressed over the next 7 months?
I started for the first 2 months. I started to get really tired, so I started napping for half an hour every day. That was very unusual because before I could sleep 5 hours and I was perfect. I could perform without any problem, but now half an hour nap every day, and then a couple of times my hands got a little bit shaky, and then I went to Mexico 2 months later, and I went down the hill with first fever. I started sweating a lot. I started shaking my hands. I got panic attack. My heart was just really in a bad shape. I ended up in hospital in an emergency. They diagnosed me like if I had typhoid, and then I developed from there. The next day I developed vertigo, and when I was heading to see the doctor, I ended up in a wheelchair because my body started shaking in such a bad way, and the feeling of passing out, it was so strong. I had a lot of sensitivity to noise, and my eyesight started getting blurry. I remember being in a restaurant with my family, and I just started crying because half of my body was paralyzed. I couldn't move. So imagine from being a very healthy girl, no fearless, what I always say, I was fearless. All of a sudden, you're dealing with all these symptoms that appear from nowhere. And I just completely lost my whole independence in those 7 months, reached a point that I couldn't even go to the supermarket alone. I was always driven by my husband. He was always with me when I was going shopping. And sometimes I just had energy just to have a shower and go back to sleep. I got horrible insomnia as well, bleeding on my gums. I started losing hair like crazy. I felt like my nerves on my cheeks were jumping. I got as well really bad pain on one of my hands. I couldn't even bear to touch it. It's just, I can go on and on about all these symptoms, dizzy, joint pains, headaches. At some point, I felt like electric shocks in the middle of my brain.
So, Angelica, you left England after 2 months and went to Mexico to seek further treatment. What caused you to leave England and go to Mexico?
No, I went to Mexico to do a rally when all these symptoms developed really badly. And then I flew back to London without knowing what was my problem. I kept looking for an answer. I ended up seeing 22 doctors in total between Mexico and the UK, and nobody knew what was wrong with me.
What types of doctors did you see?
Have you called ear, nose, and throat doctor, infectious disease doctor? That was absolutely appalling the way she treated me, because she said that at some point she thought that I had AIDS, and the vertigo I had is because I was racing. As I say, the doctors in the hospital, they were specialist eye doctors, gastroenterologists. When I was in emergency, I was seen by 5 different specialists there. And it's all types of doctors and degrees and, very renowned and well-known doctors, and nobody knew what was wrong with me.
And at the end of the 7-month period, you were pretty much dependent on your husband to get out and do anything.
Absolutely. And as I say, I lost all my independence. I became, being such an independent woman, fearless, running my own business, motor racing, traveling the world on my own. I couldn't do that. I couldn't even go out around the corner on my own.
So now when this 7-month period ended, you finally found a doctor that identified Lyme disease as the cause of all of your problems. Can you walk us through that discovery that you finally have a reason to all of your symptoms?
I would say an accident maybe on social media when I decided that, well, the plan of leaving my team was the year before, but it didn't happen. And then I decided to leave my team. And when I resigned my racing team at the time, and I needed to let all my friends and fans, because I have some followers all around, which were my plans. And when this post on my social media went out, my husband insisted for me to write that I was dealing with a virus. And I didn't want that to happen, but he said, you need to let them know. And I'm so grateful that we did, because of that post. When somebody read it, my dear friend, and I call him my little motor racing angel, Stoffel, read my post that I was dealing with a virus, he came back on a private message saying, don't know your symptoms, because I didn't describe any symptom. I just said, I'm dealing with a virus, but when I have my next motor racing plans clear, I will let you know. And he came back saying, no idea which are your symptoms, no idea what are you dealing with, but doctors in this continent, they had forgotten about Lyme disease. And he sent me a link. And when I read the link, I thought, this is what I have been dealing with. And the bite is the bite I had in February. This is end of August. So I went back to the GP, requested the test for Lyme disease. And I must say, in the UK, they don't have an accurate test for Lyme disease. It's very unreliable. And against the GP will, he sent my test, came back positive, and she still waited for another 7 days for me to get antibiotics.
So Angelica, over 7 months, you saw 22 different doctors between Mexico and the UK, some of them the top in their field. None of them thought Lyme disease, despite your tick bite and despite your classic Lyme symptoms. And when you finally posted that you were struggling with a virus and an illness to your fans, one of your followers actually recommended Lyme disease, which then caused you to go follow up with your doctor to then get a positive Lyme disease test.
Exactly, correct. And then the doctor gave me amoxicillin. To be honest, when you have because 6 months have gone past, and when you go after 6 months, you're dealing with chronic Lyme disease. So amoxicillin is not recommended. You should be on doxycycline, and it's what I have been told by my specialist. And obviously, I got prescribed the wrong antibiotic, and obviously, I got, I think, 2 weeks. And then when we requested the 3rd week, I was denied the treatment, and they were saying, I think she's not well in her head. She's not dealing with Lyme disease, have no idea, but we're not going to help her. Those were the words over the phone that the GP told my husband.
So after 14 days of amoxicillin, after you suffering for 7 months with debilitating symptoms, they said that it wasn't the Lyme disease and it was a psychological issue.
Exactly.
How did you feel at that point?
I felt more depressed. I felt left alone, because I thought, where am I going to go now? I live in London. This is the medical system. Where do I look? Where do I ask for help? If it's not the country where I'm living, where can I go? But I was so lucky. I was really sad and frustrated and angry and lots of feelings. And I was scared. I was really scared. I think that was my main, because I thought, if they can't help me, who is going to help me? But I was so lucky that somebody heard about this doctor in Mexico, forwarded me an interview that they heard, and she's one of the researchers of Lyme disease in Mexico, and now is one of the best doctors that is helping so many people in Mexico. And now people are traveling from different countries to see Almudena in Mexico.
So Angelica, how did you find this doctor again?
Well, when I get denied the treatment in the UK. My cousin that works in the radio, she has a radio program, listened to this doctor that she was being interviewed with a patient with Lyme disease. And, the whole story of Elsa and her Lyme disease, misdiagnosed for 15 years, blah, blah, blah. So, and my cousin forwarded me this interview saying, there is a doctor here in Mexico. So next Monday, I get on the phone to this doctor that I bless and adore, and I'm so grateful. She took my phone call on the second attempt. She said, don't worry, give me an hour. I will see you on Skype. First of all, I need to see you physically. And then we had a chat over the phone and said I told my story, I told her my symptoms. She saw me and she said, for me, you have Lyme disease. There's no doubt. And that afternoon, Mom and Dad went in Mexico to see this doctor. They sat with this doctor. She explained about the illness and get the prescription of all the multivitamins, all the antibiotics I needed. And I was lucky enough that a friend of mine was flying to Mexico, and all my treatment, my first treatment got flown to the UK with a friend. I was so lucky that we found Almudena, and that has changed my life. I'm not in remission. I'm still fighting. And we discovered that I'm not dealing only with Lyme disease. I have Ehrlichia and I have Anaplasma, two of the co-infections that sometimes come with Lyme disease.
Did this doctor in Mexico run any additional tests other than the one that was originally done by your primary care doctor?
Well, the doctor in Mexico, she has the proper test for Lyme disease and co-infections. So, and she works with another doctor. There are two young doctors, and she has a degree in tropical disease from Harvard. So, and together they just work. It's a great team, and they are helping a lot of people in Mexico as well with Lyme disease.
So now that you finally found the proper doctor to treat you the correct way for your Lyme disease and other tick diseases, what was your new revised treatment protocol with this doctor from Mexico?
Well, my new treatment was I'm not taking antibiotics at the moment, but I was on 2 different antibiotics at the time, big doses of antibiotics for months and months and months, and she was switching the antibiotics because their bacteria gets used to them. So every 3 months. Then I am in a very particular diet that to stop inflammation in my body, because that's the other thing. We're dealing with a lot of inflammation, so we have to have a very specific diet. And I couldn't exercise for 2 years, but now I'm back doing my exercises, because also it's really good to exercise when you're dealing with Lyme disease, but sometimes we don't either have the energy or we can't do it because it just really affects you inside. So I have been in a regime of multivitamins. I also have been trying different alternative therapies, always supervised by my doctor in Mexico. It's always what I will recommend people going through Lyme disease, because we want to find an immediate cure, and there's not an immediate cure, especially when it's chronic. But also we need to find some therapies that work for somebody. That doesn't mean that work for us. And so I have tried acupuncture, I have tried the oxygen chamber, I have tried biomagnetic therapy. That personally, I think that's the best thing that has worked for me. And so I say it's a combination of antibiotics, multivitamins, diet, positive thinking is very, very good. And as I mentioned, I think having a focus in life helps you to fight this illness that is not an easy illness to be fighting.
Did you find that the hyperbaric oxygen therapy was effective in alleviating some of your symptoms?
No, I find it got me really bad, in a bad stage. So I stopped doing that one. And I don't know, as I say, but that was my personal, everybody is different, and my treatment might not work for somebody else. That's the very complicated aspect about this illness. Everybody is different, and everybody is unique, and everybody is attacked in a different way, and everybody will react in a different way with different treatments. So it's just to find which is the best for you. So, and as well, acupuncture, I felt really, really bad, and I say it was causing me inflammation, so I stopped doing that one as well.
Now, you also mentioned that you did the bioresonance. Can you talk more about that, what it was like and how it helped you?
It's just a therapy that they use, put magnets around your body. And I think, and in theory, the magnets, they kill bacteria and viruses. They don't name the illnesses, but they, like in a way, trace where is the problem in your body, and they put the magnets where your own body tells the guy that is doing the therapy, and so, but I felt much better. So every time when I go back to Mexico, when I do my rallying, and I get all these therapies that will help me to be in a very good shape for my rally. Even I get really in a bad shape after the rally, but as long as I'm okay during my rally, and that helped me to be, to have all this energy that I need to have for the period I am racing. So yeah, as I say, I believe in this biomagnetic therapy that is not aggressive in your body as well. It's very gentle, and I always believe that if they don't do you good, they don't harm your body.
So really the theory is they identify the parts of your body where the magnets need to be placed, and then the magnets will kill the bacteria that are making you sick.
Yes, that's the idea of this therapy. And for example, at the moment I'm trying, now that you said, I'm trying a new therapy, Qigong therapy, and it's as well with music that apparently has cured cancer. So, and all these therapies, in a way, I'm thinking, when you're dealing with such a aggressive bacteria, you need to try anything, and something might work. And obviously, I think has to come along with all these antibiotics. Because I don't think just to try and find a therapy that will get rid of this illness is not the right thing. But that's my personal view.
So this new therapy you're trying, you said, is music therapy. Is that what you said?
It's Qigong.
Can you walk us through what that actually is?
Yes, you just lie on the floor. It's a therapy that comes from China, and they have these big dishes, and it's so gentle, the music that they play with these 3 dishes they have in front of you. And you just lie down, and let me tell you, every time I do that, my body just relax, and I just fall asleep. And these vibrations, the idea of this music is that it will work in a particular vibration that will work with it's a healing therapy, what they call. So as I say, I'm happy to try anything. At least it will relax my body, because I think when we are dealing with Lyme disease, we are so stressed of what's going on.
So Angelica, have you tried any other therapies aside from your antibiotics and the ones you just mentioned, such as herbs?
I tried some herbs as well. I say, whatever my doctor allows me to try, I'm happy to try.
And in your opinion, were the herbs helpful in your treatment?
I think so, because I am much better than I was. I'm not 100%. I would say maybe I am at 70% who I was. And I need to be very careful with my energy. Sometimes I need to sleep a nap for 2 hours. but that's okay. Now I understand that's okay. And I don't push myself very hard, because sometimes we try to push hard, and the harder you push, bounce you back in a bad way. So we need to push, to find a gentle way how to push your body forward, but also to understand that it has to be a slow pace to allow your body to heal.
So have you tried any other treatments like ozone therapy or glutathione or infrared saunas, probiotics, CBD oil, anything like that?
I have tried probiotics. I tried another one that was as well with music. I was connected to a particular music, like classic music, for 2 hours, and that treatment went for a month. So they put you music for 2 hours every day. So I have been trying everything that has been there for me. Well, this might work, and so what I try. I am looking into trying the Rife or Rife.
The Rife machine.
Rife, yeah, because I heard, and there are some people that are saying that it has worked for them. So I'm researching about that, and I might try next time, this therapy.
So I think it's safe to say that this doctor from Mexico really saved your life.
Correct. Exactly. He knows how to deal with long treatment of antibiotics, because 21 days of antibiotics, it doesn't work.
So Angelica, can you share with our listeners how you're doing with your racing today?
Well, with my racing, I'm doing very well. I'm very grateful that my new team, my driver, he trusts me. He knows all about Lyme disease. And, I think when I go into the racing car, I put my helmet, and my mind is so focused about racing. And I wish, it's something that I love, and I'm so passionate that Lyme disease doesn't exist in that moment. And because I have all this adrenaline in my blood, it just keeps me focused, and I can perform 100%. And obviously, after every rally, I just for 2 or 3 weeks, I'm exhausted, and I might be in bed with some of the symptoms. They come back, but it's okay. They are not there when I'm racing, and I can perform. And for me, racing, to go back into a rally car means I'm winning this battle against Lyme disease. Has changed my life, but I'm not going to allow it to take away my motor racing.
For how long a period of time did you lose the opportunity to race when you were in the throes of your Lyme disease battle?
Well, I was so lucky that for those 7 months that I was misdiagnosed, I didn't have any rally. And to be honest, when I look at if I had to race on those months, I don't think I could. I wasn't able to go into racing car the way I was feeling. In the stage I was not even confident of even thinking about me going motor racing in the stage my body was. But as soon as I got diagnosed, and as soon as I started my treatment, I knew that I had a rally. It was 2 months later, and I thought, I'm going to get better. And obviously, I did my rally. We didn't have a good rally. We blew the engine, but after that rally, I had a flare-up, a horrendous flare-up that they thought the bacteria had gone into my brain because of the symptoms I was showing. So I had scans and everything, and I'm so lucky that my brain is clear. The bacteria is not in my brain.
So how has your Lyme disease journey impacted you as a driver? Has it changed the way you drive? Has it improved?
Well, I couldn't drive for 2 years, I would say almost 3 years. So I couldn't drive not even a normal car until last year. I started doing some driving tests that are not on the, I didn't need to drive around the motorway or B roads or anything. And I was fine with that. So gradually I have been going back into driving, but for 2.5 years I wasn't able to drive. But now I'm okay. And for example, when I am in the passenger seat as a co-driver doing my rally, I am fine, absolutely fine. Only once on the first rally, I had a horrible head. Only my driver noticed, Gabriel, but he was okay with that. He didn't said anything at the time. And I just wanted to go back into the rally car, because I know as soon as I put my helmet, it's just I feel so secure with my helmet, and I think I just get into the zone of mindfulness that this is my passion and I'm not going to allow it to take it away, and I'm just fine. I don't know if people can understand that, but when you have such, and it's just the same as passion for life, I understand that my life is not going to be the same after this. I am a completely different person. I am, as I say, I never imagined that I was such a strong person, but with this has tested me, and I'm not going to allow to take my life away.
Angelica, that was a really beautiful description of both your professional and your personal transformation. And that leads me to my last question. So we're now at the Tech Hacker portion of our podcast. And this is the portion of the podcast where we ask you to help your fellow Lymies and people who are listening to this podcast who do not want to become Lymies about how they would deal with finding a tick on them. So as a tech hacker, I want to ask you, if you woke up tomorrow morning and you found a tick biting you on the leg, what would you do?
First of all, I will try and take it in the proper way, so the tick comes out of my leg properly without leaving the head inside. I will keep the tick in a bag and I will send it to be tested. That's the first thing I will do, and keep an eye off if I had a rash, because that thing about having the rash or not having the rash, it's not a rule that not having a rash is that you don't have Lyme disease. People that don't have a rash, they can get Lyme disease. And as I say, I will send the tick to be analyzed. And I think as a precaution, I will take 21 days of antibiotics, supervised by a doctor. Always, what I say to people, always supervised by your doctor that is treating you. Because there are a lot of people trying to find an answer and medicating, or people that, asking other people, what are you taking for them to start taking? That's the wrong thing to do. If you're going to start treatment with a doctor, stick to that treatment and trust your doctor, because the doctors are the persons that know about Lyme disease. And it has to be a doctor that is familiar with this disease, not a doctor that is guessing or is trying to learn about this disease. Find a specialist that knows about Lyme disease. It's what I would recommend.
Thank you, Angelica. That was a brilliant description of the steps our listeners should consider taking in the event that they find themselves or their families bitten by a tick. And Matt and I can't thank you enough for sharing all of your story and your brilliant insights with our listeners.
No, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Matt, for having me in this program. And I think making awareness, we can help more people, because my story in the past, when I have shared it, it has helped people to be diagnosed, and at least something positive has brought to my life as well. I have been able to help somebody else that has been struggling for years without knowing what was her problem, and then my story has helped her to find an answer to her problem. And I think to put a name on something that is so scary, so I can't even find the word, that it's out of our control, and not finding an answer, being able to label your disease is very frustrating and it's very scary. But when you find that name, and I think at the beginning when I found the name of my disease, I never imagined how difficult and how bad is Lyme disease, how devastating can be and debilitating can be Lyme disease. I think I learned it through my process of healing myself as well. We just need to embrace life, and every morning it's an opportunity to keep fighting for what this thing has taken away.
Thank you for listening to the Tick Boot Camp interview with Angelica Fuentes Garcia. To our listeners, we have a call to action. First, if you'd like to learn more about Angelica Fuentes Garcia and her tick disease journey, please visit her Instagram at AngieFuentes122. Second, if you enjoyed this episode of the Tick Boot Camp podcast, please share it with your friends by using the social media buttons you see at the bottom of our post. Third, we at the Tick Boot Camp have created a tick bite blueprint that has been inspired by the information that has been provided by past podcast guests. We urge you to visit our website at www.tickbootcamp.com to view the blueprint. Please note we would appreciate any improvement suggestions you would like to offer us. Fourth, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Spotify to get the automatic episode updates of our Tick Boot Camp podcast. And finally, we thank you, our listeners, for your past comments. Please take a minute to leave us an honest review on iTunes, Instagram, or on our website. We make it a point to read every single one of the reviews we get. Thank you for listening.